At midnight, when the whole neighborhood slept and even the street dogs curled beneath broken streetlights, the last thing single dad Ethan expected was a knock that sounded like a demand from fate itself. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't hesitant. It was the kind of knock that told you your life was about to split cleanly into a before and an after. And when he opened the door and found his boss standing there in the freezing dark, hair damp from rain, eyes burning with something he couldn't name, she said only 6 words that rooted him to the spot: "Say that again, but look at me." It was the moment everything inside him shifted, though he didn't understand why. Not yet. Ethan hadn't planned on crying that night, that he hadn't planned on anything except surviving the next morning. Ethan Bennett never imagined life would narrow to 2 people, himself and his 7-year-old daughter, Lila. After losing his wife 3 years earlier to a sudden illness, every day felt like an uphill run with no breath to spare. He worked as an auto technician in a small but busy workshop downtown, low pay, long hours, and a boss who expected perfection. Her name was Cassandra Hale. Strict. Sharp-tongued. Brilliant. The kind of woman who could silence an entire staff with a single raised eyebrow. She was not cruel, but she was a storm, unpredictable, intense, and impossible to ignore. Most employees feared her. Ethan respected her, but from a safe distance that he couldn't afford to lose his job. Not with bills stacked like cliffs and a child who still woke up some nights whispering, "Daddy, is Mommy still watching us?" His heart always broke in the same place every night. Tonight was no different. He had fallen asleep on the couch after fixing Lila's school shoes with glue because he couldn't buy new ones yet. He dreamed of phone calls demanding overdue payments, dreamed of Lila's teacher telling him she needed a new uniform, dreamed of failing at everything. Then came the midnight knock, and Cassandra Hale holding a crumpled paper in her hand. Earlier that day at work, Ethan had been distracted. Lila had been sent home with a fever. His hands shook so badly he dropped a wrench onto the concrete. Cassandra saw him struggle, and in a rare soft tone asked, "Everything okay, Bennett?" But he didn't look up. Didn't want sympathy he couldn't return, that he only muttered, "I'm fine. I wish someone, anyone, understood what it's like to fight so hard every day and still feel like you're losing." He thought she hadn't heard, but she had. She'd heard every word. He didn't know she took it personally. He didn't know why she drove across town in the rain at midnight. When she handed him the paper, it shook between her fingers. "You dropped this on your way out," she said. "But it's not just that. I need you to say what you said today, but this time look at me." Ethan's chest tightened. "Why?" "Because someone does understand. Because I do." He froze. Cassandra, his boss, the woman everyone said had a heart of steel, looked heartbreakingly human in the silence that followed. The world seemed to tilt. His breath caught. He opened his mouth, and chapter 1 of the rest of his life began. Ethan didn't know what terrified him more, the honesty she asked for, or the honesty rising inside his throat. He swallowed hard, eyes drifting down to the paper she brought, a sketch Lila had made for him. A messy crayon drawing of her holding his hand under a smiling sun. At the bottom she'd written, "My hero." Cassandra must have seen it fall out of his bag. She must have studied it. She must have cared. "Say it again," she insisted, her voice lower now, like she was afraid of the answer. "Say what you said today." Ethan felt his knees weaken. "I said I'm tired," he whispered. "I said I'm fighting every day, but sometimes it feels like I'm failing at everything, especially at being her dad." It broke out of him like a confession. Cassandra's face tightened, not in irritation, but something far deeper. "You're not failing her," she said. "I've watched you for months. Do you think your effort goes unseen?" Her voice carried warmth he had never heard from her, not once in all the time he'd worked under her. But before he could respond, a small voice echoed from behind him, "Daddy." Lila stood in the hallway, hair messy, blanket dragging, eyes still hot with fever. Cassandra's features softened instantly. "Hi, sweetheart," she said gently, not like a boss, but like someone who cared about children, about pain, about people. Ethan blinked. He had never seen this side of her, never imagined it existed. Lila sniffed. "Daddy, I had a bad dream." Ethan kneeled, instinctively pulling her into his arms. Cassandra lowered herself to Lila's height. "Do you want some warm water?" she asked, voice like velvet. Lila nodded shyly. Cassandra stood, moved toward the kitchen as if she'd lived there for years, found a mug, heated water, and returned holding it with both hands. She tested the temperature on her wrist before handing it over. Ethan's chest tightened with something new, trust, or maybe fear of trusting. After Lila fell asleep again, Cassandra lingered by the door. "I didn't come here to overstep," she said quietly. "I came because you matter, Ethan. More than you think." And then, just before turning away, she whispered, "No one should carry the world alone." He watched her walk into the night, completely unaware that those words would rewrite everything inside him. The next morning, Ethan arrived at work braced for awkward tension. But Cassandra acted like nothing unusual happened, except her eyes followed him more closely, as if memorizing the parts of him he hid. During lunch she approached him again. "I have a proposal," she said. His stomach dropped. "If this is about last night, it is," she interrupted, "but not the way you think. I want to adjust your schedule." "My schedule?" "You'll work earlier hours and get off before Lila's school ends. No overtime unless you request it." Ethan blinked. "But that's too generous." "It isn't," she said sharply. "It's overdue." He felt the sting of emotion claw up his throat, and, she continued, softer now, "I'd like to start a company fund for emergency childcare support. For me? For any single parent on the team. You inspired the idea." Ethan felt the room tilt. He tried to speak, but his voice cracked. "Why are you doing this?" he whispered. Cassandra hesitated, the truth flickering across her face like a flame. "Because I know what it's like to need help and pretend you don't," she murmured. "And because last night, something about the way you spoke, something in your eyes, made me realize you deserve more than survival." His chest burned, not with shame, not with fear, but with the first real breath he'd taken in years. Over the next weeks, everything shifted. Cassandra showed up with warm meals when he worked late, with coloring books for Lila, with a softness that contradicted her hard reputation. She laughed more. He smiled more. Lila adored her. One evening after closing, Ethan found her sitting alone on a stack of tires, eyes tired but peaceful. He sat beside her. The silence between them felt warm, familiar, safe. "Cassandra," he said quietly, "that night, when you told me to say it again, why did you want to hear it?" She turned to him slowly. "Because," she whispered, "I needed you to know you weren't invisible. And maybe, because I didn't want to be invisible to you either." His breath caught, her hand rested lightly over his. "Ethan," she said, "you don't have to pretend with me." Something inside him broke, softly, gently, beautifully. This time, he faced her fully. "I don't want to pretend anymore." Their hands intertwined like it was the most natural thing in the world, like two people who had carried too much for too long finally laying the weight down. The message of their story became simple, quiet, and powerful. Healing doesn't always arrive in big miracles. Sometimes it comes in the form of a midnight knock, and someone who finally says, "You're not alone anymore."